Hey, TFA family, welcome into an emergency video / podcast. We have some tough news to break, probably another major injury to a top running back in your 2021 drafts here that are probably happening this weekend and next weekend. Earlier this evening, JK Dobbins had a tackler at his knee, kind of pushed it back the opposite way it's supposed to bend, and we're worried that it might be an ACL. We have not had that confirmed at the time of this recording. But Kev, give us your thoughts, what you're doing potentially with JK Dobbins, and then obviously the rest of the backfield, if he were to miss an extended amount of time.
First of all, I am no doctor, so I am not going to pretend to be. I did see that Jesse Morris, who's an injury doctor who does, he actually dropped a video, so I would recommend go checking that out, but I will summarize it. Basically, best case scenario, you're looking at a PCL injury, which he'll explain it way better than me, but the PCL is what goes over the knee, what protects it, protects the ACL. Obviously, that's going to be injured. That would be best case scenario, and I think it was 3 to 4 weeks is what he would be out. With that, if it's best case, worst case is obviously it's torn ACL. So it looks like it, again, not a doctor, but it looks like it probably is worst case scenario. But especially the way his teammates, because like players generally know whenever it's something serious, right? Like it's almost never not serious with the way a player reacts to it. And there was talk about on the sideline, all the players coming up, and usually means they know, because like Dr. Chow has talked about it, like they can almost tell. They don't really need an MRI; they can tell almost immediately if it's an ACL injury or not. However, I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to continue. I'll stay away from that. But as of right now, the hypothetical, if he's out for the year, obviously great news for Gus Edwards. So if you've already had your draft, you drafted Gus Edwards, congratulations. You just picked up what I think would probably be a top 20 running back, somewhere right around there. I actually updated my rankings already with just kind of thinking of where I would put him. I have him right now at RB 21 right now. As we record this, I put him ahead of Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris, Darrell Henderson, that kind of tier. I think there's probably going to be some speculation that they could bring somebody in. People have already talked about maybe it's Mark Ingram, who's on the Texans right now, but he was kind of been carving out a role with the Texans that he could play. But the Texans are kind of where they're at. I can't see that if the Ravens came calling, I would think that they were going to that they would definitely deal him back. Other than that, you still have Justice Hill there, who people were high on a few years ago, but he never really turned in anything. And then you have Tyson Williams, who is an undrafted guy out of BYU, 5'11", 220. He did post a 4.53 40, which is impressive for a guy his size. And, his best comparable on player profile is Damian Harris. But that guy's probably not anybody you're really looking at actually adding. The big one is Gus Edwards, right? So if you're heading into drafts this weekend, whether you draft tomorrow, hopefully you haven't already drafted, or if you draft next weekend, Gus Edwards would probably be the guy that I would look to target. Like, where do you think he winds up in ADP wise?
Yeah, you said running back 21-ish, and I'm kind of right there. Just in the couple of minutes we've had to kind of break to this news and think about it, I have him at running back 24, kind of right behind like Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, because I just think maybe they have more talent. But the situation is what really excites you, right? When we're talking about these Ravens running backs, we're talking about the number one rushing offense, and obviously a lot of that comes from Lamar Jackson, but they're rushing it a lot with their backs. And so now if you're talking about an offense with just Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, who's an undersized third down back, who's kind of a guy I think we can get excited about as well. But I think we can see a decent volume opportunity for Gus Edwards as the main back there. So we're talking about him potentially going from 140 to 150 carries, probably up to the 200 plus, right? Like, I don't know how much more he can get. Does he get to 220, 230 carries? I don't think he's going to be big in the pass game, because this offense just doesn't pass the ball to their backs a whole ton. If at all, I'm guessing that's going to go to Justice Hill on third downs. So that is that floor where he's kind of like a Josh Jacobs, where I don't think he's going to be playing on third downs. I do think that's ceiling his cap, so he's not going to jump much over the top 20-ish running backs for me. He's going to be right in that range that you have him. I think around Sanders, Jacobs. I have Darrell Henderson up there as well. He's right in that tier for me, running backs 21 to 25.
If anything, you look at Justice Hill, 5'10", 198. Like, he's not going to be a guy who's going to get a large workload. Somebody that I think they could use in the passing game, but they've never really done that either. But not that he's had a ton of opportunities. I mean, he only played in 8% of the snaps last year, 12 carries, 5 targets last year. So it's not like this is a guy we're talking about that really has a lot of production. When you look at Gus Edwards, he's never really been utilized in the passing game either. 13 targets last year. We did have the 144 carries. I mean, and 700 rushing yards. So I look at the situation. You know, Gus Edwards, I think. That's why I kind of view him similarly to kind of like Damian Harris, right? Where I think that he's going to definitely pick up a lot of early down work, goal line work. But, you know, obviously Lamar is still there. Lamar is still going to get his, absolutely. The biggest question is, do they bring in somebody else? Even if they do, like, because there's nobody at this point in the offseason you're going to get that's really going to push the needle, right? And like, so like people have said, like, what about Le'Veon Bell or you know, Todd Gurley? I don't care. Like, bring those guys in, whatever. Like, you know, those guys are clearly past their prime a little bit. And so none of those guys would really worry me. And so I do think Gus Edwards does make a lot of sense. You know, and hopefully now let's talk about it from this too, because we shouldn't just go worst case scenario. If JK Dobbins is only out, let's say 3 to 6 weeks, right? Let's say he's out for 6 weeks. What are you doing with him then? Where would you feel comfortable taking with that?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to think about this, right? Because a lot of people, we won't know. I guess if they know if it's an ACL, they normally confirm that pretty quickly. So, I mean, if your draft's like tomorrow or something like that and you're unsure, I'm probably going to avoid it because we know what the worst case scenario is. He's done for the year and you waste a pick. Best case scenario, we're talking about maybe a month off and then he comes in injured, you know, they have to work him back in. So if we don't hear a timetable or we don't hear a confirmation of an ACL and it's just a hyperextension or PCL and they say that, I mean, he's probably going to get pushed down still for me, probably in that range below a Trey Sermon, below Javonte, below James Conner, who I know you like, below A.J. Dillon. He's probably going to look right around that, maybe A.J. Dillon, Tony Pollard, for me, Alexander Madison, kind of the handcuff range for me, just because maybe he does come back that week 5, but I don't know if he comes back 100%. You know, whenever you draft a guy and they're coming in with an injury, it doesn't always come clean with just the 4 weeks that you're told right away. So there is a big injury risk, even if it is kind of the best case scenario, right? How about yourself?
If you're going to tell me he's out for a month and he's not going to play or even a little bit longer, I mean, I think you have to push him down past a lot of these dudes that are going around there. Like, I would probably put him, if he was going to come back, you probably put him around, for me, like the Raheem Mostert, Melvin Gordon, Michael Carter, you know, A.J. Dillon toward kind of range of running backs, because some of those guys, but you're kind of getting into that secondary running back, stuff like that, where you're in there. Like, I would feel okay with taking that if he's got to be back, because it's a shame, because I mean, JK Dobbins was a player that I felt, you know, like he was kind of a guy this year that I was like, oh man, I don't really know what to do with him. Is he going to get more? Is he going to be more of a, you know, a workhorse? Is he going to get more pass catching work? You know, because if you look at his numbers, like JK Dobbins, the player, the prospect, was fantastic for me. I think he was like my second or third guy coming out of last year's draft class. And I mean, he produced. I mean, he was super efficient last year. He was 5th in juke rate, 18th in evaded tackles, 447 yards created, but 14th in yards created per touch. Like, this was dude that was primed to really break out this year. And so it's a shame, you know, we lost Cam Akers, pour one out for the homie, and now looks like we might lose JK Dobbins. So probably agree. I think you just, as of right now, you have to avoid him. If you draft, obviously tonight, you draft tomorrow, you absolutely have to avoid him. You cannot draft him, because it could end up blowing up in your face, because at that point you might be taking him in the 6th, 7th, 8th round. And at that point, you just wasted that pick for absolutely nothing. So you have to avoid him for now. Now, if we get, we're going to know probably by tomorrow, where this is heading. Even tonight, it's possible, because essentially they'll go in, they'll do an X-ray. It's probably going to be negative. And then, they'll do an MRI after that, probably tomorrow morning or something. Right. And so we'll know probably sometime tomorrow. But that being said, I think it's a clear avoid unless we find out he is coming back. And then from there, I still would be hesitant, just because a player coming off that type of injury and everything else, is he going to suffer anything else, or is there going to be other further setbacks? So unfortunately, it looks like that we lost another great one before the season's even started, which we could go down a rabbit hole. Why the hell were they even thinking about playing these guys in these preseason games? It makes absolutely no sense. Play your backups, the guys that are fighting for roster spots. Play those guys. Do not play your studs. Do not play the guys who are, because this is a huge blow, really, for the Ravens when you think about how heavy of a running offense this is. This isn't a team like the Chiefs or the Packers or the passing offense that can support this. Okay, you lose your starting running back, it's still going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt nearly as much now. Like, you have to ask, like, I guess the last thing we should close on is, how do you think this affects the Ravens as a whole? Like, do you bump up Lamar Jackson a little more, thinking maybe they have to pass the ball a little bit more? Does this kind of elevate the other guys around him, or how do you view it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to finish with, in that I think this is a slight upgrade for Lamar Jackson, because I do think they will have to lean on the pass a little bit more, because they couldn't pass less, right, from last year. They were going to have to increase their passing regardless. And so now without JK Dobbins, and I do think Gus Edwards is still a good talent. He's probably underrated as talent. And I like Justice Hill coming out of Oklahoma State. I think he can be a good back as well, just a little bit undersized. So I do think they obviously run a lot. They're probably going to have run first team, but we're talking about Lamar Jackson jumping from the 475 passing attempts to maybe he gets into the 500s mark. And you're just talking about just the 25 extra, even 30 extra pass attempts. That'll do wonders for him, because we know what he brings for you on the floor. He was already quarterback 5 for me. I'll have him flirt up there with quarterback 4, who I currently have as Josh Allen there. So this definitely helps him as well. And I think that just further solidifies him as that tier break until you get to the rest of the quarterback 6 and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they need to anyways, that they need to kind of stretch the legs of Lamar Jackson a little bit and push him a little bit as a passer to kind of see what you have, because if you're going to invest in him long term, you have to. So I think this bumps up Lamar Jackson a bit, to where he was before. And then I also think that, the pass catchers here, Mark Andrews looks a little bit more intriguing. And, if you want to take a shots on guys who, Rashad Bateman's tough because he is dealing with his own injury, but he should be back, I think, week 1, 2, 3, somewhere right around there. But, as long as you're getting him, I think in the 11th, 12th round, I don't mind taking him there. And then some of the other guys that they have there. So, yeah, I do think overall this is probably a bump to the passing offense when you lose a running back like JK Dobbins. But I do think they'll still be okay with Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards has proven to be a very, very strong backup running back, and somebody that is reliable and can do some of the things that JK Dobbins could do. So I do think that is in the cards. We'll see what they do. We'll see if they bring anybody else in. But there's nobody that they're going to be able to bring in that's truly going to be able to make up for this. And it's just going to be some jag running back, some old vet or something like that, if that's what they decide to do. But you never know, because like I talked about with this Tyson Williams guy, he has been getting a lot of buzz out of camp, and he has looked really good in preseason games. I know he's an undrafted guy. I'm not saying you should go out and add him immediately or anything, because you shouldn't. But I do think he's a guy you should just kind of have in that back of your mind. Like, if something else were to happen later in the year, if he's out for the year, something happens to Gus Edwards, because it's not going to be Justice Hill that would take over in that situation if something were to happen to Gus Edwards. It would definitely be Tyson Williams, who's 5'10", 220, who would be that guy, best comparable to Damian Harris. So again, not somebody you have to go out and grab, but I definitely think a name that you should at least have on the back of your mind, because he was already fighting for the third running back spot. And there were some beat reports talking about that he was really making a strong case to be that third running back behind these two. So with that being said, I think that's kind of where you pour one out for JK Dobbins. It sucks to see this. Why NFL coaches decide to play their guys like this is beyond me. But, Gus Edwards stock up. JK Dobbins, hopefully we see you this year, but it's not looking.
Yep. Just to recap real quick. So we're avoiding JK Dobbins. If you have your drafts in the near future and we haven't heard anything yet, we are drafting Gus Edwards as a top 24 back. I think Justice Hill is a good flyer in the later rounds of your drafts as that pass catching guy a little bit. And then Tyson Williams is a guy for maybe your dynasty stash or your deep leagues if you have that. So that's going to be a wrap for us here. We hope we bring you happier news on the future videos. So stay tuned for them.